Hey, welcome back, everybody. Time once again for some living hope. Our journey with pancreatic cancer, sharing the real life stories of those really affected by this deadly disease and how they deal with it on a daily basis. And hopefully, some hope along the way. That's today's topic, right, Roberta?
Yes, I think we have a lot of hope, and today is World Pancreatic Cancer Day, so it's a day that we honor and bring out hope. We do every day, of course, but today we make a really big pitch on it. So I'm really honored to welcome Dr. Andrew Rakeman, Vice President of Research at the Lustgarten Foundation. Dr. Rakeman leads Lustgarten Scientific Strategies, driving breakthroughs in early detection, prevention, and treatment with the goal of making pancreatic cancer a curable disease. Thank you, Dr. Rickman, for joining us today. We're happy to see you and happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Robert. I'm glad to be here, and especially glad to be here on World Pancreatic Cancer Day and share the progress and the hope that we're seeing. And more to come, more work to get done, but definitely a time for us to be hopeful about what the future is going to hold.
Yeah, and it's I was diagnosed 23 years ago, so I'm glad to see all the changes that have happened, and it's taken so long to get there, but at least we're finally, I think, on the right track and we're doing it. Can you share a little bit about your journey and what drew you into the research and ultimately into the fight against pancreatic cancer?
Yeah, so what landed me at Lustgarten and in pancreatic cancer research specifically was a little bit of happenstance at the time. But my scientific training is not in cancer research. It's a very basic biology. So I was always excited about science as a kid. Always knew that I wanted to be in the lab and doing research. And with that, went on to pursue a PhD after my undergraduate work and worked at Sloan Kettering, but studying very basic biology, studying genetics and developmental biology. So sort of the process of a fertilized egg turning into an embryo in the mouse. Um, and was very excited about that going forward. At the time when I was then finishing up my PhD, I was looking for what was going to be the next chapter of my career, and wanting to do something where I could stay very close to science and what was exciting about research and exciting about things on the cutting edge, but also be a little bit closer to the impact that biological research can have on people and on patients. And that sort of led me into the foundation side of things and working with foundations to support biomedical research and support biomedical research in diseases where needed that kind of patient-driven support to drive progress. And that ultimately brought me to about 5 years ago to the Lustgarten Foundation.
You spent, I think it was 13 years leading major research initiatives with the diabetes, right? Did
Yeah.
that, how did that shape your approach to the scientific strategy for pancreatic cancer, or did it have any comment at all with that?
Yeah, no, so my first job was with what was then called JDRF, which is now called Breakthrough T1D. It was a type 1 diabetes foundation. Like I mentioned, when I was looking for a job, I was looking for something where I could stay close to the research, but also close to patients and impact. And at that time, in sort of the early 2000s, it was a really exciting time in type 1 diabetes research where, but type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. Immune therapies were getting traction. Stem cell therapies were really starting to get traction. Regenerative medicine was being exciting, and there's a lot on the technology side for insulin delivery. But things weren't there yet. So it was an exciting time to think about a disease with a high unmet need that wasn't being served well through other kinds of funding approaches or through the profit motivated or pharmaceutical industry side beyond insulin, and a lot of promise in the science. So I joined at that time and had a bunch of different roles and really was able to see the impact that, not only the money going into support research, but money that comes with a real patient-driven strategic focus and driving innovative approaches to supporting research and supporting collaborations, how that could accelerate progress and turn research advances into technologies and ultimately into products that benefit patients. And that is something that when the opportunity at the Lustgarten Foundation came up and I looked at, kind of where pancreatic cancer research sat and where the foundation was, it felt very similar, right? Clearly a high unmet need in pancreatic cancer research in terms of what's available to patients today and what was available, 5 years ago when I started. But very exciting and promising science and changing landscape of research that, foretold that progress was really, on the horizon and ready to come soon. And a foundation that was maturing and able to take on different kinds of roles, not only in financially supporting research, but really driving strategic focus, driving different approaches to supporting work, fostering collaboration to help push things forward. So,
Recently,
I think all told that, yeah, my previous experience has definitely taught me a lot about what's possible on the funder side in terms of accelerating progress.
I think your past what you've had with diabetes, and then we found, or we've been told recently, that there could be a link between what is it, late stage or late age development diabetes?
Yeah.
Exactly what is it, and how did that finally come about? Because this is something that's fairly new.
Yeah. So I think that, there's, as I'm sure you're aware, that, there's not a lot that's understood about who's at risk for developing pancreatic cancer, right? So there's some contribution of genetics and familial risk, and that's not fully understood. There's some small environmental risks, smoking and heavy drinking can be a contributor, but it's really not well understood. There are some suggestions that other pancreatic diseases like diabetes and chronic pancreatitis also lead to an elevated risk. When people started looking closer at, well, how does the diabetes fit in? It started to become clearer that there was a subset of people who were diagnosed with diabetes, and this is now not type 1 autoimmune diabetes like I studied at JDRF. People are diagnosed with diabetes typically as adults, and not with a lot of the same other symptoms that are often associated with type 2 diabetes, so often lean or with weight loss, and have a diabetes diagnosis, that those folks have a increased risk of pancreas cancer over the next 3 years is really when it lasts from the time of their diagnosis. So this has become a very interesting area of research that people are looking at more and more now. One, to see, is this folks that should be getting screened more closely for pancreatic cancer? So again, just to be clear, there's a lot of people get diabetes every year in the U.S. Very few of them develop pancreas cancer. But of the people who develop pancreas cancer, a large fraction of them have a recent diabetes diagnosis or changes in blood sugar control. So the thought is now shifting more and more to the fact that perhaps it is that early tumor development or early changes in the organ that come from the emerging cancer that are disrupting the other functions of the pancreas. So the pancreas really does two things. It makes digestive enzymes and it makes hormones, including insulin. And so the thought is that with that tumor there, if you start to disrupt those two functions of the organ, they'll cause, changes overall in the metabolism that can be read out. So, it's an emerging area of research. I think that link between diabetes and pancreas cancer is definitely real. And now the question is, well, how do we, use that to help to try to find people earlier in the course of the disease?
So maybe somebody who's just been diagnosed with diabetes should maybe talk to their doctor of pancreatic cancer, or should they wait?
I think it's always a good thing to have as a question. Now, like I said before, so the majority of people with a diabetes diagnosis will be, average risk for developing pancreas cancer. It's, a few folks that will go on to develop pancreas cancer, but it's worth to have that conversation, particularly if it's, if the diabetes doesn't look like typical type 2 diabetes development. It'd be good to have that conversation with your doctor. Say, is there anything else you should be worried about?
Okay, good. Thank you. Lustgarten's mission is to transform pancreatic cancer into a curable disease. What does that look like in action from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the reasons why I think at least I'm careful, and I think overall as a foundation, we're careful to use that, curable disease rather than finding, a capital C cure, right? Is trying to be clear about what does a cure look like, or what do cures, plural, look like? And, I think when we look across different cancers and other cancer types, and one cancers that, in the past had been very deadly and now are much more treatable, and you have many more long-term survivors. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? It really depends on understanding the individual tumor type that somebody developed, understanding the stage that they've been diagnosed at, and treating it accordingly. Right? We've seen transformations like with breast cancer that have gone from, has become a much more survivable and curable disease at many stages with advent of multiple therapies, right? So when we think about making pancreas cancer curable, it really is taking all the different areas of priority for us and needs from the patient and bringing them all together. Better diagnosing folks earlier, getting them into treatment earlier, having better treatment options, less toxic treatment options that people can stay on, having more options that can be tailored to the individual patient and the individual tumor type, and that'll ultimately leading into more patients with long-term survival, more patients moving into no detectable disease for a long time, more folks living lives like you do, Roberta, where they can count, not just in months or years, but in decades since their diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe a little off subject just a little bit from what we're talking about, but I just got a question. I just want to do it so I don't forget. Pancreatic cancer has or is very good at reoccurring when you think you've got it all, and then maybe years later it reoccurs. Do we know why that is?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and that's one. The short answer is we don't understand all of it. We're starting to get some cues. One of the things that makes pancreas cancer really hard to treat is it's insidious. It moves very quickly, even when the tumors are very small, and begins to spread to other organs very early on. And so even in folks that have, potentially curative surgery and are diagnosed at early stages, about half of them will have a recurrence, before 5 years out, and the 5-year survival rate is still quite low compared to other cancers, even in folks that have surgery. Now, why is that? Can be a question of, is that telling us that the cancer is actually spread earlier than we thought, and there were what we would call, occult metastases or micrometastases that we couldn't detect around the body even at the time of surgery that we missed? Is it that, the surgery isn't great about removing all of the tumor, or that there's new tumors that pop up? I think there is research going on to understand that and to test, and importantly to see if are there options we can do for folks that go for surgery to treat them in different ways or more aggressively around the time of surgery that would reduce the chance of having a recurrence. So for example, I think work that's been generated a lot of excitement around using personalized vaccines around the time of surgery to try to prevent recurrence in the out years. Is work that we've been supporting in an early stage clinical trial to see if local delivery of chemotherapeutic agents to the liver can prevent liver recurrence after surgery, but really understanding that why is it that these tumors are so likely to spread, what's driving that, and then how do we treat these small metastases that we can't even see at the time of surgery to make sure that they're eradicated and that they don't come back.
No, because I've known a couple of long-term, like 20 years and plus, that had a reoccurrence. Is that just because it's good at hiding and it just takes that long, or is there some other reason maybe for it?
So that's an interesting, and long term after 20 years or more might be a different mechanism than somebody who has a rapid recurrence after 5 years. So that would be interesting to understand. And I think it raises another kind of point of, there's a lot about the biology that we don't understand yet, but by studying those, especially those kind of cases that are outliers, teach us a lot about how to do things better. For example, the work that I referenced earlier with Vinod Balachandran at Sloan Kettering, using the personalized vaccines, mRNA-based vaccines, that was work that all originated from them looking at, well, what's different in people who have a rapid recurrence after surgery and those who survive for a long time, really pointing to those that survive a long time. There's some stronger immune response early on, and that led them to looking at vaccine approaches as a way to try to boost the immune response in all patients that drove that. So I think it is you know, a lot of the focus of our research is really trying to make sure we understand in patients what's happening to uncover bits of biology that we can then exploit therapeutically.
Is the vaccine available, or is that still in the clinical trial?
That approach is still in clinical trials. It's now in a phase 3 trial that's under investigation for people who are candidates for surgery.
You said stage 3. How far does it go before it could get actual FDA approval?
So phase 3 is so a little bit of a backup for everyone. So clinical trials, very highly regulated process that really prioritizes safety of the patients while trying to advance new drugs. So there's typically 3 phases before something would go for approval. So phase 1 is really focused on safety signal of the drug and finding the right dose to use. Phase 2 is safety of the drug, plus beginning to look at efficacy, or how well does it work? Does it target the disease? And then phase 3 would be the largest trial you would run, where now it's still safety still being a primary concern, but really now focused on, can we show does this work better than what's the current standard, or good enough to go for approval? And that generates that package that would go to the regulators for approval.
Any idea how long something like that would take?
Um, Overall, the process can be long. The length of each of the trials will also tend to get longer with each stage, because they'll have to enroll more patients. They'll often be looking at a lot longer term outcomes. Off the top of my head, specifically for the vaccine trial, I don't know how long. I don't know where they are in terms of enrolling for the phase 3 trial, or how long it will be from the time they enroll the last patient till they complete the analysis and bring it forward for approval.
Well, it's something on the horizon, something we can hope for and
Yes.
be willing to be very thankful when we get it, right?
Yeah.
So Lustgarten helps support the science behind the FDA-approved immunotherapy for pancreatic cancer. What are the next steps for immunotherapy research?
Yeah. So immunotherapy is something I think is very exciting. It's really transformed how we think about treating cancer overall, vaccines being one example of that, right? That's really, turning on the immune system against the tumor. Um, the one that you referenced that's been approved. So this is a drug called Keytruda, which is an anti-PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor. That's approved for a small subset of pancreatic cancer patients, which we call MSI high, or microsatellite instability high tumors. So these are tumors that don't do good at repairing damage to DNA. So they accumulate a ton of mutations. Tumors that have lots of mutations are more attractive, or tastier to the immune system. So the immune system tends to react to them better, and they tend to respond better to these immune activating drugs like checkpoint inhibitors like Keytruda. This is true not just in pancreas cancer, but lots of other tumor types as well. So in that case, in those patients, you can go with just this one immune drug and see a benefit to the patients. In most people with pancreatic cancer, if we just go with one immune drug, there's not a benefit to the patient. So the work now is really looking at, is it just that pancreas cancer, most tumors are not going to be responsive to the immune system, which I don't think that's the case, or have we just not found the right combination of drugs to tickle the immune system in the right way that's going to give it the energy to go in and attack and kill the tumor? So a lot of the research right now is focused on looking at other combinations, and we've been starting to see some success there in early stage trials with other kinds of combinations to show that you can turn on the immune system, get it into the tumors, and start to destroy some cells.
Yeah, I know that treating pancreatic cancer is very difficult because I guess the barriers, my doctor always explained it kind of as like a hard shell M&M trying to get to the peanut.
Yeah.
So is there any research going on to better that, to find how to get the chemo into that barrier and fight the tumor itself?
Yeah. So it's an important thing, right? So there's lots of things that are challenging about pancreatic cancer, and one too is the tumors in the pancreas get encased in this very dense stroma, we call it, this other tissue that surrounds the tumor, right? And even if you take out the tumor and look at it, most of the cells within the tumor are not the cancer cells themselves, but you get this lots of extracellular matrix, so sort of this goo that cells put out that surrounds them. There's, other cells, fibroblasts, support cells, blood vessels, neurons that all come in and come in to support the tumor too, which not only helps the tumor grow, but also, as you say, like keeps drugs out. Metabolized drugs makes it harder and harder to treat. So going back to what I said before, really what we want to be able to do is understand what is that biology? What are all the players that are there? So either we can try to, disassemble therapeutically that stroma around it, cut holes in it to allow the drugs to get in better, or are there Achilles heels that appear because of those cells that are in there that the tumor's dependent on, right? Or can we do something that will change the function of the fibroblasts or the neurons or the other cells that are supporting the tumor that makes it more vulnerable going forward? So there is definitely research going on to try to better understand that biology and look for approaches to alter that going forward. And that's, a lot, even on the immune side, that's a lot of what it is how do we make sure that the immune cells don't just get activated to the tumor, but they have access to the tumor.
I know KRAS has been long considered undruggable.
Yeah.
So what KRAS focused research is Lustgarten doing anything on that research as well?
Yeah. So KRAS has long been the bugaboo of pancreatic cancer, and it's now one of the very exciting areas. So for people that don't know, so KRAS is what we call an oncogene. These are genes that get mutated, they get activated, and then they drive formation of tumors. Pancreas cancer is one of the things that's unique about it, is that they're extremely dependent on KRAS mutations. So KRAS is mutated in lots and lots of different types of cancers, but it's mutated in almost everybody who gets pancreas cancer. About 90% or more of pancreas cancers have a KRAS mutation. KRAS is an enzyme, and it was been very hard for a long time to find drugs that could, stick to this enzyme and switch it back off. A few years ago, there were some breakthroughs on the chemistry side that showed that you could design molecules that could do this. And now those molecules have made it into the clinic and are in clinical trials and showing some fantastic efficacy in pancreas cancer as well as other cancer types. These drugs come in lots of different flavors. There's some of them that are specific to certain KRAS mutations, some that inhibit all KRAS, some that inhibit all different types of RAS. There's, KRAS, but there's also HRAS and NRAS to make things really confusing. And they're showing a lot of promise. So, where we're looking in terms of research on this is, well, looking to the future, right? So if these drugs are progressing forward, I think there's a good chance that they will eventually get approved, and there will be RAS drugs available for people with pancreas cancer. It's also likely that people will develop resistance to these drugs as they go on treatment with them. So we want to think about, well, how do we combine RAS drugs with other kinds of therapies to either avoid resistance or overcome resistance when it develops. We want to understand, how is it that the tumor is really responding when they get hit with these drugs? What's happening to the stroma and the tumor environment? What's happening as the cells die? Are they activating the immune system? Is this giving us a window that, some of these immune drugs might be even more potent in there? And that's, a combination of studies in mice in the lab, using tissues and samples from people on the current clinical trials to understand how patients and how tumors are responding, and some of that, fundamental biology work really just to map out these different pathways. But, the RAS drugs are, one of the very exciting things that's happening right now in pancreas cancer research.
Yeah, I've heard KRAS all through my journey, and it's always interesting, and it's come a long way. So thank you for explaining that. And it's, time goes by so quick. I wish we had more time. I have more I want to talk about. But before we do leave, do you have or is there one hopeful message about the future of pancreatic cancer that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so I would say I wish we had more time, because I think there's definitely more than one hopeful message to talk about. And you know, one of the things going back how you started, and I like the way you started our conversation, Roberta, thinking about, why did I get excited about this kind of work and why am I here? Um, and I think it's really that part of, what's been driving the Lustgarten Foundation. I'm sure what drives you in your work, Roberta, is like this understanding that, there's clear patient needs. Patients can't wait. We need stuff out there. And there's clear things that we need to be able to understand about the biology that we're going to get through the supportive research that's going to help to bring that benefit to patients. Why I'm particularly excited right now about where research is that we're seeing advances in terms of our understanding of the disease, but not just in an academic setting. We're seeing things that we're learning that we're being able to turn into new clinical trials, new combinations of drugs, new therapies moving forward, like the RAS drugs. We're seeing approaches to finding tumors earlier being tested in the clinic. We're really transforming our understanding of where pancreas cancer comes from and how it starts. That's informing what to look for in terms of who's at risk. Like we talked a little bit about diabetes and risk. That's, probably part of the story in some people. There's probably other things that are starting to come into focus now that's going to allow us to identify, who should be getting imaged regularly for surveillance and identifying it. It's happening in people. And finally, I think we're starting to get, approaches to understanding the disease in clinical trials that's really going to accelerate the progress that we can make. For example, we've just the final report on a large clinical trial that we supported called PASS just came out. And this was a study where they compared the two standard of care chemotherapy arms against each other in about 150 patients. But at the same time, did just about every kind of analysis you could think of on these patients and on samples from their tumor, both before they were treated and after they were treated. That's teaching us about, not only do people respond, yes or no, but who's likely to respond to therapies, why are they responding, why do they stop responding, and generating these tools. So, I think what really makes me hopeful is that across all the different priorities and needs for pancreas cancer patients, which are easy to identify, we're making progress, and we're making progress that's relevant to the clinic. So it is a very exciting time for research.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time for us as survivors as well to hear all this. And again, I really do thank you very much for coming and sharing your time with us. And I really do want to have you come back because I think there's much more that we can talk about. But for more information, please contact the Lustgarten Foundation for Pancreatic Cancer Research at lustgarten.org. That's LUSTGARTEN.org. As long as you speak my name, I shall live forever is dedicated to Wesley Simple. Wesley was a 20-year survivor who shared his incredible journey with us in June. He passed away on November 17th. Wesley touched so many lives. After his episode aired, I received countless messages from people who were inspired by his strength, his honesty, and his hope. His legacy of courage and kindness will live on in all of us who were fortunate enough to know him. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Some hope here on Living Hope, your journey with pancreatic cancer as we continue to explore the stories surrounding this deadly disease. And we hope you'll come back and share it with others as we continue this journey right here from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.